Hello all and welcome to another episode of Ian's VR Corner. Now, I know things are looking a little bit blurry right about now, but don't go adjusting your monitors. After playing about 6 hours worth of No Man's Sky on PSVR in one day, this is how things look for me now, so I'm afraid you've got to deal with it too. All jokes aside, this week's episode is going to be a little bit different because, instead of the standard nonsensical Let's Plays, I'm going to be giving you my first impressions of the PS4 Pro VR port of No Man's Sky. These first impressions are based off of about 6 hours of play, which took place on the day the No Man's Sky Beyond update was released. So hopefully at some point in the future, Hello Games will release some patches that'll put a stop to what few criticisms I have. And to be fair to the folks at Hello Games, they've been pretty good at pushing out updates regularly to fix past mistakes, so who knows? Maybe there'll have been one pushed out to fix all my criticisms by the time this video goes live. Okay, so I feel like I should get the blur problem out of the way right off the bat, because it's literally the first thing I noticed when I started up the game in VR. I found the presence of said blur pretty jarring due to its intensity, and although my brain tuned it out after a while, those early moments of the experience were more than a little bit disappointing. Now, I've seen quite a few people on the internet saying that the blur isn't that bad, and I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly fussy, but I honestly was a bit taken aback by just how noticeable it was, especially on things like distant items and the displays in the interior of my cockpit. Granted, it's been almost 5 months since I played a preview build of No Man's Sky Beyond on a PS4 Pro at a press event, so my memory may have dulled a bit, but I'm almost positive that the graphics then were much sharper and more detailed than they are now. I mean, I definitely don't remember my first thoughts being, oh my god, look how blurry it is when I played the demo, that's for sure. So, for the time being at least, that blur is here to stay on PS4 Pro, and as I've heard from other players, the base PS4 too. But how does it impact the overall experience? Well, the blurriness has no effect on the game in terms of its mechanics, everything works as it should, and in fact, the experience of exploring the universe in No Man's Sky in VR is every bit as jaw-dropping and massive and immersive as you could hope for it to be. Saying that though, the blur does kill the magnificence a bit. And what do I mean by the magnificence? Well, those stunning alien vistas and mysterious creatures that you spot now look like muddy blobs on the horizon rather than beautiful, mysterious wonders, and this works towards dampening that awesome sense of discovery that I remember feeling every time I set foot on a new planet in the flat version of the game. Honestly, climb over the crest of a hill in the 2D mode and everything in front of you will look like the cover of an incredible science fiction novel, but do the same in PSVR at the moment and all the pop-in and blur makes it look like a child tried to do a Bob Ross landscape with a dirty brown crayon and a packet of Tesco value finger paints. It's smudge central, yo. So yeah, with my biggest criticism out of the way, you'll hopefully be pleased to find out that the rest of the game is an absolute joy to play. I remember hoping for and imagining VR support for No Man's Sky when it first came out, and this experience is everything I hoped for and more. The sense of discovery and scale in VR is amazing, and the ability to fly around from planet to planet and galaxy to galaxy while being encased in this game is unlike anything else I've played in VR. This is a straight-up, never-ending VR adventure, and depending on your patience for the survival genre, you could easily end up spending countless hours in here, losing yourself in the moment as you explore brand new world after brand new world. Oh, sorry about that. I was just mining for some dihydrogen. I mean, you gotta grab it where you can find it, eh? Now, where was I? Oh yes, exploring. Exploring means moving, and thankfully No Man's Sky has all the standard comfort settings you'd expect from a modern VR game, like vignettes, teleportation, and click turning. All of which I switched off because I'm a tough guy. No Man's Sky VR can be played with either the DualShock 4 or with twin Move controllers, and I tested it out with both. The DualShock provides the easiest control scheme, with movement identical to that of the flat version, just with some added motion controls in there for your tools. When using things like the mining gun, the tool sits snugly in the centre of your controller, meaning you can point it at whatever you want rather than having to rely on head tracking, and for me, it worked perfectly. While it was a breeze to play the game with the DualShock 4, the real way to play No Man's Sky is definitely with twin Move controllers, if you can get past the tricky learning curve, that is. Anyone with experience using Move controllers in PSVR shouldn't have an issue with getting around in No Man's Sky. The movement scheme is very similar to that of Skyrim, and I had no problems when navigating the environment. What took me a little while to get used to, however, was all the fiddly wrist-mounted menus. Normal No Man's Sky involves a huge amount of busy work in menus anyway, but in VR, things can get a little bit overwhelming for newcomers, especially when they're trying to learn the Move controls. Remembering which wrist had which options on it was an issue for me at first, and it definitely resulted in some frustration for the first hour or two as I slowly learnt the controls. Once that hurdle had been overcome though, I found that having independent control over each of my hands was incredibly immersive, much more so than just using the DualShock, so those initial controller struggles were ultimately rewarded. Little things like reaching up to boop the back of my head in order to initiate a scan was good fun. Picking up and interacting with things with a gentle tug of the controllers was a great touch too, and the physicality of grabbing a handle in your ship's cockpit to exit the craft again adds a nice sense of believability to the proceedings. I think the one thing that's going to give a lot of people issues though is the way you control your ship with your Move controllers, because oh boy is it tricky, and when you're trying to learn the ropes and you're spinning around everywhere, chances are it's gonna make you feel proper icky. Flying your ship with the DualShock 4 is by far the easiest method, and to be honest, it's probably the best way to do it too, because it just feels instantly right to anyone who has played a flight sim in the past. The Move controllers attempt to create the feel of a HOTAS controller, but with limited success, as this method seems to alternate between being overly sensitive on land or completely unresponsive up in space when you're being attacked by pirates and need to perform evasive maneuvers. After a while, I figured out that the best results come from holding my right Move controller vertically while in the ship, mirroring the position of the cockpit's joystick. But still, this lacked the accuracy and precision of the DualShock. Thankfully, the game can tell when you swap control methods, so if you're struggling, it is possible to use Move while you're on foot, but then swap to a DualShock anytime you fancy rocket manning it off to the stars. So what else did I dig about No Man's Sky in VR? Well, the terrain deformation, of course. Get it? Dig? There's something about being able to shape your own world in VR that I just find so enjoyable. Once I got my hands on the terrain tool and was able to dig holes in the ground, I was ready to give up my day job and become a mole man. I loved the ability to quickly and easily carve my way through mountains in search of caves and treasures, or dig myself out of trouble after falling down a hole. At one point, to shelter from some very hurty-burny rain, I even decided to tunnel my way towards my waypoint so I didn't have to get my hair wet or burnt, and it was just the simplest but coolest thing in the world. Honestly, No Man's Sky gives you such an incredible feeling of freedom anyway, but this extra ability to be able to mould the landscape to your will is just so intoxicating in VR that I could do it forever. It really is that much fun. So, in summary, No Man's Sky for PSVR is one of the biggest and best experiences on the platform, even though currently it feels a little bit like you're playing it with Vaseline smeared all over your eyeballs. I do hope that Hello Games will find a way to make things a bit sharper in the headset, because I desperately want to spend hours in this game, and that's hard to do when the visuals are giving me a headache. With that said, I really do rate No Man's Sky in PSVR. I think it's an amazing achievement, and I'd recommend anyone who owns a unit to pick it up, if only to get a taste of what VR could be like in the future if the platform continues to grow and expand. And that's that. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Ian's VR Corner. I'll be back next Sunday with plenty more VR shenanigans, so do like, subscribe, and click on that bell icon thingy if you want to see more. Goodbye! I've gone to space!